Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Are You In? So you might be wondering why I'm smiling right now, and it's because I just did this album review, and it was about 25 minutes long. And as soon as I checked it out, I noticed, hey, the video and the audio weren't syncing. So awesome job! And I have to be leaving for my lessons very soon. So I am putting a timer on myself. I'm going to try to keep this within 15 minutes. So I just started it, and we're going to go right into it. So on today's Are You In, I will be reviewing Grizzly Bear's newest album entitled Painted Ruins. Now, for those of you who don't know who Grizzly Bear is, it is a indie folk / rock psychedelic pop band, indie folk rock band from Brooklyn, New York. The members include Ed Drosty on lead vocals, keyboards, guitar, omnichord, and auto harp. Chris Bear on drums, percussion, glockenspiel, xylophone, keyboard, lap steel guitar, and backing vocals. Chris Taylor on bass guitar, backing vocals, keyboard, wind instruments, and producer. And Daniel Rosen on lead vocals, guitars, keyboards, auto harp, and banjo. Their previous albums include Horn of Plenty in 2004, Yellow House in 2006, and Vecatimus in 2009, and also Shields in 2012. No idea if I said that the second to last one right. You guys can let me know in the comments. Anyways, I had not heard. I mean, I've heard this band just like I had of New Pornographers before, but like I never got a chance to listen to them until when I was going through the Rolling Stones top 50 albums of 2017. Noticed that this one was on there and gave it a shot. And they're kind of similar to me in terms of where I place them on my list, but let me go through a couple things before I talk about that. So my first kind of thoughts about this album is it's a beautiful, well-created CD. Just like an amazing sounding album with a lot of intricate parts. As I went through all these instruments that all four of them play, you can tell that they know their stuff and that they can create some interesting and very experimental sounds. Just a couple of different chord progressions. You might not understand what all this means, but basically what I'm going to tell you from the get-go is that a lot of these songs do a lot of modal borrowing, where you're going between different keys. So, for example, on Wasted Acres, the first song on the album, you have a chord progression of B flat minor, D over D flat, and G over B before you go to C major 7, and then it goes C major 7, B flat major 7, A minor 7, D minor 7, and then throughout the verses, you get the first time around, you get the melody with a C minor 7 chord as the pedal, and then the second time around, you have the same melody with an F minor 7 chord as the pedal, which makes for some very interesting and intricate sounds. You get a song like Losing All Senses, where the chord progression in the beginning isn't as intricate as, say, some of these other songs. It's just B7, G sharp minor, E7, and D, with a chord progression of the chorus of F and G interchanging until you get to the last part, which is F, E, and D. But you get this very intricate outro part of F major 7, E flat major 7, F major 7, E flat major 7, D flat 7, F major 7, E flat major 7, D flat 7, A flat minor, B flat minor, and E flat. Just this very intricate sound. And I could go on forever. There's so many different ones of these. Cut out, you have B flat minor 7, A flat, F major 7, E flat, C minor 7, and F. Very intricate, though not as intricate as some of these other ones, but still a very interesting sound that you've created. And then you have a cool chord progression of C minor 7, E flat major 7, G flat, and D flat in the second part of this. And that's one of these I kind of want to harp on for a second, because when we go through some of these other ones, you'll see that it kind of has the same progression of taking the ending chord and going down a half step to the beginning chord. So D flat going to C minor. And then you also have this idea of the previous chord of that being a fifth either above or below the other one. So if you take G flat, go up a fifth, you get D flat, and then you go down a half step to C minor 7, which it kind of shows the range of, hey, we're going to use not just the fifth idea, which helps create different sounds. And like if you're going to go between different key centers, you usually try to go with this fifth approach. But it also uses the fifth substitute, which is the flat 2, which also can help create movement between different key centers. And another one of those that kind of does the same idea is Glass Hillside, where you have a chorus progression of G minor 7, E minor, E flat major 7, and A flat major 7. So it kind of uses that same idea of going from E minor, going down a half step to E flat major 7, going down a fifth to A flat major 7, and then again going down a half step to G minor. This really interesting chord progression that helps us go in between different key centers. And that's not even talking about another really cool progression, a really quick one of A minor 7, A minor, A minor over G sharp, D over F sharp, C major, F major. Again, it's using that fifth approach for a minute, but it's also using this nice half step approach that I really like, that you see sometimes in other like very 60s sounding songs. I mean, like the first one that I can really think of is While My Guitar Gently Weeps. It's just another really cool just sound in general that I really like. And again, just really interesting sounds all around. Just being able to go between these just beautiful and interesting things. God, I mean, like For Cypress, another really cool one, where it's a main chord progression of F, A minor 7, D flat major 7, A flat major 7, and then you also have this little progression in the bridge, which is F, C, D flat, D, G flat. Again, none of this might make sense to you right now, and one day I might try to dissect some more of these songs so that you can understand a little bit better of what I'm talking about. But it just I love the approach of some of these songs. That being said, not all these songs are very accessible. Not all these songs are necessarily interesting, or I mean, interesting is not the right word. They're interesting in sound. They might not be rememberable as songs for certain people. So, for example, if we go back to Wasted Acres, interesting chord progression, interesting sound, not a memorable song, not nearly a great song to start this album. It's my second least favorite song on this album. It's I don't know if it's the way that they sing this song. I don't know if it's the melody, but just something just rubbed me the wrong way from the get-go. From the first time I listened to this album, I was like, oh my god, I'm not gonna like this album. Then you get Aquarian. Aquarian is another one with an interesting sound, and it has an interesting idea of each lyrical idea is 3 measures long until you get to the last one, which is 4 measures long. But again, another one where it just doesn't do well. I mean, it has an interesting chord progression of B7, C, D minor 7, and then you have this little interesting part of an E going to a C sharp minor 7, going to a C, which alternates between C and an F over C. But that little area is not, it doesn't just gel with me. It's like 1 measure E, 2 measures of C sharp minor 7, and 1 and 4 of C, which should have resolved to a C major 7. That would have been more interesting. I feel like that C sharp minor 7 is wasted potential. And just, again, it's another one where the melody is just weird to me. The way that song is just weird to me. And it just takes away from this song. And it's sad, because there is a very interesting part at the end of the guitar noodling between C and A minor 7, and then going A flat major 7, E flat major 7, D flat major 7. So again, it's using that half step approach. It's also using that fifth approach, and it's a really cool sound, but it's another one where it just gets wasted by, it has wasted potential. It's not nearly interesting enough. Um, Glass Hillside, I really like that song. I think it has a lot of really cool Beatles vibes and Steely Dan vibes, but at the same time, I can understand if you don't like this song because it's very weird. It's very out there, and that's a big thing, is that a lot of these songs are somewhat out there in terms of form. Um, if we go to back to Four Cypresses for a second, has an interesting sound, but there, and it builds very well. All these parts come in really cool, but uh, it doesn't have a conventional form. It just goes between the different verses, and like you wouldn't know of, like you wouldn't say, oh, here's the verse, here's the chorus. Um, it has an interesting form. Three Rings, another one that's my favorite song on the album because of the harmonies, the way that this song builds, the interesting ideas between going from a slow 3/4 to a more up-tempo 6/8 is really cool to me. The chord progression isn't anything to talk about, but it's another one that doesn't necessarily have this conventional form. And you wouldn't really think that there was any progression unless you got to that 6/8 feel. Um, Losing All Sense, I really like this song as well. It has a great feel to it, but I can understand if you think it's weird because it goes from this very bouncy sound to this more of a jazz crooning sound, and then this really ethereal kind of sound at the end, before going back to this bouncy sound. Um, Cutout is another one that is a beautiful song. I love the drumming on it. I love how it works with the noodling of the guitar, and I love the interesting sound of like a cowboy kind of song in the second part before it keeps building and building and building. But it's another one that you wouldn't say there's a clear-cut chorus and a verse. Um, it's weird. Like a lot of this album, you could write off as being very experimental in terms of sound, in terms of construction. Um, it's beautiful, but you know there might not be as many memorable songs in there for you as say some other albums. And it's very weird that like as we get to like the last half of the album, you find more of these conventional songs. Going from Neighbors on down, you get a little bit more of a conventional sound where the chord progressions might not be as interesting, but the music is still beautiful and the lyrics are more approachable. They're not as cryptic. You get Neighbors where you have only a progression of E minor, G, D minor, and C in the verse, and E, D minor, A minor in the chorus as it repeats a couple of times, and then you get a C, B flat, and a little bit more, interesting. But again, not like a hugely, not a hugely advanced song in terms of chord progression, but it works very well because of the instrumentation, because of just the interesting counter melodies, the harmonies, the way it builds. The drums are really cool and really powerful. There's woodwinds, there's horns, all these really things that make this a very beautiful song. And the lyrics themselves are very interesting and not as cryptic when it's talking about the idea of a couple growing apart so much that even though they live together, they're basically neighbors. And it's just a beautiful song that doesn't have to be overly complicated. Seisel, another beautiful song where you have Chris Taylor singing on it instead of Ed or Dan singing on it, and it makes for another just beautiful song, even though the instrumentation is simple and the chord progression is, not as interesting either. And it's talking about addiction and how we kind of keep our own addictions, and sometimes it's very hard to lose them, even when we're trying to fight them. Just another beautiful, beautiful song that is not overly hard, not overly complicated. Then Sky Took Hold is another one, very simplistic yet bombastic song in terms of the drums, in terms of the instrumentation, which is talking about a song that's talking about the idea of letting your fears control you and what that feels like, and the music itself fits that so well. So it's interesting how sometimes just simplistic works so well on this album. There's so on Sky Took Hold, the contrasting motion of the melody and the harmony in the chorus is so cool, even if the chords aren't intricate. And I'm going to go a little bit over time, but it's fine. I'm basically done. Sky Took Hold, the only downside for me is that it's a little bit too long. It overstays its welcome because of that outro. But overall, it's very interesting that as you go through this, like I'm someone who likes complicated music. I am someone who likes deep and interesting music. But it's weird how I grew more accustomed to these last three songs or some of these other ones that the chord progression doesn't have to be overly complicated but more approachable so that the other parts can shine through, where the lyrics can shine through, where the melody can shine through, where all these other instruments can shine through. The drumming on most of these songs are very interesting. The guitar parts are mostly interesting. How all this music works together is very interesting. But I can understand why it's not approachable to some people. And going back quickly to my top 50 list from last year. So when I was going through this and like the first time through, I had put New Pornographers and Grizzly Bear right next to each other on the list. I think I had them both in the top 10. I want to say that like it was both around like 14 or 15. And then as I kept listening through these again and going through my list, it was like, okay, there's a little bit of a gap, and there's a little bit of a gap, and there's a little bit of a gap. And eventually got to a point where I had New Pornographers as number 12, and I had Grizzly Bear as number 22. And I think it's interesting to me that, you know, even though it's more beautiful, New Pornographers one is more poppy and it's more memorable, even though there are some songs on there that aren't as memorable, like I talked about a couple of weeks ago. It's a very interesting CD and one that's very hard to give a rating or talk about. All I will say is that if you're looking for very beautiful music, very interesting indie rock, very experimental music, this is going to be a CD for you. I really enjoy it. I also know that each time I listen through it, there are some times that I have to sludge through a couple songs. So if you are wanting to listen to the whole CD, definitely do so. Also, but if you are looking for certain tracks to get rid of, I'll say here, the first three songs on the album aren't worth it to me. Wasted Acres is Wasted Potential. Morning Sound is probably their most straightforward song on the album, but there's just something about the way that Ed sings the song and just instrumentation that kind of just makes it bare bones in comparison to everything else. Four Cypress is not a bad song, but a very out there song as well. If you are trying to get rid of songs, and I would say Aquarian is not worth it either. It's wasted time for me. I would understand if you don't like Glass Hillside. I personally really like it a lot, but I would understand if you're like, okay, I can't listen to this song. So I would say that, and then listen to Sky Took Hold, but don't listen to the whole entire song. So that's 6 songs for you to work with if you are looking for just how this CD sounds, if you aren't trying to get through the whole entire CD. But I would say overall, take a listen if you really like this type of music. It's on my top 50 list for a reason, and I probably could have put it in my top 20. But it's really good in sound. It's very interesting. There's a lot of intricate ideas, but it's not always accessible, and I can understand why someone might not like this CD. So that's my time. If you want me to dissect some of these songs, I definitely will, because I would love to be able to go over the theory behind some of this stuff. And you know what? I might even start working on a little project of going through some of these songs that I've talked about and show why some of this stuff works theory-wise. But let me know if you want that. If you enjoy this, of course, a couple different things. Give it a like. Leave a comment on what your opinion of this album is and what I could do better. Share this with your friends. Subscribe to my channel. Of course, that's the biggest thing that you can do. And just keep on the lookout for other things I'm going to be doing. So the next thing is another song, which I'll drop out either tomorrow or Saturday. And then Sunday, I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I'm going to be reviewing, but there will be another album review for 2018. It's either going to be Sunday or Monday, depending on how I'm going to be able to get through everything. This weekend's going to be very busy. It's graduation weekend in Boston, as well as Boston Calling, which of course check it out if you hope you get to do that. I'm not going to be able to. I'm going to be working, and I'm going to be working my ass off. But it's either going to be Sunday or Monday. I will let you know as soon as I know. So thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.